My sister-in-law said our 4-year-old daughter died because of our bad parenting, while the entire family stood by and watched. 4 months later, when she tried to abduct our remaining children from school, we realized to protect our family, we'd have to bury theirs in a different way. It all started 12 months ago, long before that Tuesday, on an ordinary morning that felt just like any other. My wife Liora, a beacon of patience and warmth, was already up, the smell of brewing coffee mingling with the faint scent of toast. Liora, an elementary school teacher for 15 years, moved through our modest, 3-bedroom home in the quiet suburbs of Willow Creek with the practiced grace of someone who orchestrates chaos into harmony daily. Her classroom was her second home, filled with the vibrant artwork and innocent chatter of 6-year-olds, and our house was no different. She nurtured, she guided, she taught. It was in her very nature. I, Alaric, a small contractor and construction manager, was usually out before dawn, supervising crews, poring over blueprints, or haggling with suppliers for the best lumber prices. My hands were rough, my mind always calculating angles and stress loads, striving for order and durability in every structure I built. Our home, a testament to years of sweat and careful budgeting, felt like my own personal fortress, a safe, structured space for our 3 incredible children, our eldest son, a quiet genius with a chessboard, our lively middle boy, a whirlwind of energy, and our youngest daughter, a budding artist with a laugh like wind chimes. We'd always dreamed of a big family, of a house bursting with life and laughter, and for 5 years, it felt like we were building that dream, piece by painstakingly beautiful piece. But 12 months ago, a piece shattered. Not the house, but our world. Liora, despite her unwavering patience in the classroom and at home, had been increasingly overwhelmed. Our youngest daughter, Aria, was born 2 years after our middle son, and the pregnancy had been grueling. Liora had battled severe postpartum depression, a shadow that clung to her even after her body recovered. She often felt she was letting me down, failing to be the perfect wife and mother she always strived to be. I saw the signs, the subtle shifts in her usually meticulous routines. A forgotten stove burner, a light left on in an empty room, a tool left out of place. Small, almost imperceptible things for anyone else. But for Liora, a woman whose life was built on order and care, they were glaring. I remember coming home one evening and finding the back door unlocked, a simple oversight. Another time, I found a half-empty coffee mug by the edge of a counter, dangerously close to where our youngest boy played. My gut tightened. My contractor's mind, always looking for structural weaknesses, saw tiny, unsettling cracks in the foundation of her composure. I wanted to speak to her, to offer help, to share the burden. But every time I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the valiant effort she made to keep everything afloat, the words died in my throat. How could I add to her immense struggle? How could I tell a woman who poured her entire being into nurturing others that she needed to be more aware? So, I kept silent. A decision that would haunt me, a quiet betrayal of my own instinct to protect. It was just a phase, I told myself, the lingering effects of the depression. She'd bounce back. She always did. Then came the day. Aria, our precious 4-year-old, the one with eyes that sparkled like dewdrops and a spirit as bright as the morning sun, was gone. Liora, after a particularly draining day teaching her first graders, had taken the kids to the neighborhood park, a place usually bustling with laughter and safe spaces. What exactly happened, Liora barely remembered, and I don't need to dwell on the horrific details here. But I remember the phone call. I remember rushing to the emergency room, the sterile smell, the hushed voices, the 6 hours that stretched into an eternity. I remember the doctor's grim face. I remember Leora's silent, shaking sobs as I held her in that cold, fluorescent-lit hospital corridor. And I remember later, walking back to the scene, past the yellow tape, past the skid marks on the asphalt, and seeing it, Aria's small plush teddy bear, lying abandoned on the curb, a smear of red on its once pristine white fur. It was a tangible mark of the void that had swallowed our little girl, a silent testament to a world now irrevocably broken. 4 months passed in a blur of grief and numbness. We went through the motions, breathed, ate, slept, all for the sake of our 2 surviving boys and our youngest daughter. Each morning was a fresh assault, a reminder of the laugh that was no longer heard, the small hands no longer clasped. Our children felt it too, the palpable shift in the air, the way their mother often retreated into quiet corners. As a contractor, I understood the necessity of rebuilding after a disaster. But how do you rebuild a soul? This was also around the time Selene, my brother Davin's wife, decided to invite everyone to a pool party at their sprawling house across town. Davin, a successful software engineer at a major tech firm, had always been the golden child, the one who moved effortlessly through life with a smooth, unruffled confidence that often made me feel like the rough around the edges contractor I was. He built virtual worlds, I built tangible ones. Selene, his wife, was a stay-at-home mom, immaculately dressed, with an air of subtle superiority. She had a knack for comparing her perfectly behaved, academically excelling children to ours, often making thinly veiled comments about our eldest son's unhealthy obsession with chess, a national chess master by 10, mind you, suggesting he needed to enjoy his childhood instead of geeky board games. She'd also made passive-aggressive remarks about our daughters, but Liora and I had always shrugged them off. "She's pregnant, honey," Davin would always say, his voice weary. "Hormones. You know how it is." He'd said it about her first 2 pregnancies, about her third, and now about her 4th. Selene was always pregnant, it seemed, always with a convenient excuse for her sharp tongue and competitive nature. Davin, bless his steady, logical, software engineer heart, was perpetually trying to debug their marriage, smoothing over Selene's cutting remarks, always seeking the path of least resistance. My own mother, Elowen, always echoed his sentiment, valuing family peace above all else, even if that peace felt more like a strained silence built on unspoken resentments. we decided to go to the pool party. Liora, ever the optimist despite her pain, thought it would be good for our kids to socialize with their cousins, to find some semblance of normalcy. The weather was perfect, the kind of sweltering summer day where the pool beckoned like a mirage. Most of our family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, all offering their condolences with soft words and empathetic glances. Everyone, that is, except Selene. Her eyes, cool and assessing, flickered over Liora, lingering on her fragile frame, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. A shiver ran down my spine. I knew, with the primal certainty of a man who built homes and guarded his family, that the foundations of our fragile peace were about to be tested. And this time, I wouldn't stay silent. The summer heat, usually a welcome embrace in Willow Creek, felt oppressive at Davin's place. It clung to the skin, amplified the chlorine scent from the gargantuan pool, and seemed to magnify every strained smile. Our kids, oblivious to the undercurrents, plunged into the water, their laughter bright and unrestrained. A sound that was both a balm and a fresh wound for Liora and me, a stark reminder of Aria's missing giggles. Then came the first crack in the facade. Our 3 children, along with Nolan and his siblings, began playing a boisterous game of tag around the pool deck. In their exuberance, or perhaps a streak of youthful mischief, they veered too close to the edge of the patio where my new Tesla, my hard-earned symbol of upward mobility for a small contractor, gleamed under the sun. I'd worked double shifts for that car, every panel a testament to contracts won and projects completed on time. A sickening scrape echoed across the yard. 3 deep, jagged scratches marred the passenger door. My contractor's eye immediately went to the damage, a visceral clench in my gut. This wasn't just paint, it was a wound on something I'd painstakingly built. I walked over, Liora just behind me, her expression already softening with the practiced, patient resolve of a teacher facing a classroom incident. We calmly gathered the kids, including Nolan and his siblings. Hey guys, I began, my voice even. We need to talk about what just happened here. This is property damage. This car isn't a toy. Liora knelt, her voice gentle but firm. Accidents happen, but when they do, we need to take responsibility, understand the consequences, and make sure it doesn't happen again. Who was involved? Before any of the children could speak, a shadow fell over us. Selene, her 7-month belly protruding dramatically, stepped between us and her children, her eyes narrowing to slits. What exactly do you think you're doing? She snapped, her voice cutting through the humid air. Yelling at my children? You have no right to discipline them. And honestly, her gaze flickered to my car, then back to my face, a venomous smile spreading across her lips. It was probably your kids' fault anyway. They're always so wild. Liora straightened, her gentle teacher's demeanor hardening. Selene, the children damaged our car. We were simply explaining why that's not acceptable. Oh please, Selene scoffed, crossing her arms over her swollen belly. It's just a car. You can afford to fix it, Alaric. Unlike some of us who actually have to budget for our growing families. She threw a pointed look at Liora, then at my kids, as if to imply our family wasn't growing in the right way. The family, drawn by the commotion, began to gather. My mother, Elowen, appeared at my elbow, her voice soft and placating. Alaric, darling, perhaps we should all just cool off. The heat is getting to everyone. The heat? My blood ran cold. My cousin Everett avoided eye contact, staring at the pool tiles. Julian, my younger brother, suddenly found a fascination with the lawn sprinkler. Nobody was stepping in. She just used my daughter's death as a weapon, I heard myself say, my voice cracking. And you're blaming the heat? Nobody's blaming anything, Elowen said quickly, her eyes darting nervously between Selene and me. But Selene is 7 months pregnant. You remember how Isolde was during her pregnancies. These things happen. These things happen? The words tasted like ash. Liora, usually so composed, stepped forward, her face pale but her eyes blazing. Isolde never once said anything cruel about someone's dead child. Because Isolde never had anyone discipline her perfect little angels, Selene snapped, taking a defiant step around Davin. Maybe if you two weren't so busy trying to be parents of the year, you'd have noticed. Selene, Davin finally interjected, his voice strained, but it was too little, too late. What? She challenged, her chin raised. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. They act like their kids are so special. Chess champion this, honor roll that. Well, look where all that helicopter parenting got them. A red haze descended. I lunged forward, but 3 sets of hands, Everett, Roland, and even Julian, held me back. Not worth it, man, Everett muttered. Think of Liora. Liora. I spun around. The sliding glass door to Davin's house stood open, the curtains still swaying from her rapid retreat. She'd heard everything. I shook free from their grips. I need to check on my wife. Alaric, wait, Davin called after me, his face flushed. We can work this out, it's family. I paused at the door, the words tasting bitter. Family doesn't do this, Davin. I found Liora in the bathroom, crumpled on the closed toilet lid, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I knelt in front of her, gently pulling her hands away. Hey, I whispered, I'm here. Her voice was barely audible, raw with pain. She said it was our fault, that Aria died because of us. She's wrong, you know she's wrong. But what if? Number, I cupped her face, my thumbs tracing the tear tracks. No what ifs. What happened to Aria was an accident. A terrible, horrible accident. Not your fault. Never your fault. The words were for her, but also for the ghost of my own guilt, the memory of the forgotten stove burner. I had to believe her, for both our sakes. A soft knock interrupted us. Liora? Alaric? It's Maris. Can I come in? It was Davin's younger sister, Maris, a quiet, empathetic soul. Liora nodded, and I opened the door. Maris slipped inside, closing it gently behind her. I'm so sorry, Maris said immediately, her eyes full of genuine sorrow. What Selene said was unforgivable. Then why is everyone out there forgiving it? I asked, the bitterness seeping into my voice. Maris sighed. Because they're cowards. Because it's easier to pressure you two to let it go than to confront her. She's pregnant, Liora said flatly. Apparently that excuses everything. It doesn't, Maris said firmly. And this isn't the first time. Liora and I both looked up at her. Maris bit her lip. Remember when cousin Thalia lost her baby, stillborn, at the Christmas party that year? Selene made a comment about how maybe it was nature's way because Thalia was over 40. My stomach turned. I hadn't known that. Thalia never came to another family event. She cut contact with everyone who was there and didn't defend her. Maris's voice was bitter, which was basically everyone. Why didn't anyone tell us? Liora asked. Because Davin always makes excuses. Because Elowen thinks keeping the family together is more important than anything else. Because everyone would rather enable a bully than risk drama at Sunday dinners. Another knock. Alaric? Liora? It's Elowen again. Everyone's worried. Can we talk? I looked at Liora. Her face had hardened into something I'd never seen before. She stood, wiping her eyes. Yes, she said, her voice clear. Let's talk. We emerged from the bathroom to find most of the family crowded into Davin's living room. Selene sat in the center of the couch, Davin's arm around her, playing up the wounded pregnant woman act. The kids had been sent somewhere else, probably the game room. Liora, sweetheart, Elowen started, her voice laced with a rehearsed concern. We all understand you're going through a difficult time. Stop, Liora held up her hand. Just stop. You all understand, really? Which one of you has buried a child? Which one of you has had to pick out a casket small enough for a 4-year-old? Which one of you has had to explain to her siblings why their sister isn't coming home? Isolde tried. We're not saying we understand completely. You're not saying anything, Leora's voice rose, raw with accusation. None of you said anything when she weaponized my baby's death. You stood there, you let it happen. And now you want me to be the bigger person? To let it go? For the sake of family unity? Roland said, sometimes we have to forgive family. Liora laughed, but it was sharp, broken. Family doesn't stand by while someone uses your dead child as ammunition in an argument about scratched paint. Family doesn't make excuses for cruelty. Family doesn't choose comfort over compassion. That. You're being overdramatic, Selene muttered from the couch. Liora turned to her slowly. Say that again. You're being overdramatic. I'm sorry if what I said hurt your feelings, but... If it hurt my feelings, Liora stepped closer. You told me my daughter died because of my parenting. You used the worst pain I've ever experienced as a weapon because you were mad about your kids being disciplined. I'm pregnant, Selene said, as if that explained everything. I've been pregnant 4 times, Liora shot back, her voice ringing with a fierce clarity. Never once did hormones make me cruel. Never once did carrying a life inside me make me callous about another life lost. Everyone handles pregnancy differently, Davin interjected, stepping between them, his face pale. Selene's been having a really hard time. Stop, I said, my voice thundering through the room, cutting Davin off. Stop making excuses. Stop enabling her. Stop choosing her comfort over our pain. I'm not choosing anyone, Davin protested, throwing up his hands. I'm just saying we can all move past this. We're family. No, Liora said quietly, her eyes sweeping over the silent, uncomfortable faces in the room. We're not anymore. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once, trying to convince us we were overreacting, being too sensitive, breaking up the family. Through it all, Selene sat on the couch with a small, satisfied smirk, a ghost of a triumph in her eyes. Enough! Leora's shout silenced everyone, a schoolteacher's command amplified by raw anguish. You want to know what breaks up a family? Standing by while someone attacks grieving parents. Making excuses for cruelty. Choosing to enable a bully rather than protect the vulnerable. She turned to face everyone, her voice breaking. 4 months ago, I lost my daughter. Every day since then I've woken up to a world that's missing her laugh, her smile, her little hands in mine, and I've survived it because I thought I had family who understood that pain. Who would protect that sacred grief from being weaponized? But you've shown me today that keeping Selene comfortable is more important than keeping Aria's memory respected. That avoiding conflict matters more than standing up for what's right. Liora, please? Elowen tried again, her voice pleading. Think of the cousins. The kids shouldn't suffer because the adults can't get along. The kids? Leora's eyes flashed, mirroring my own outrage. You're worried about the kids? Where was that concern when Selene said what she said in front of any child who might have been listening? What message does it send when they see cruelty excused because the cruel person is pregnant? No one answered. Liora walked to where our children were gathered by the door, having crept back to see what the shouting was about. She knelt down to their level. Get your things, she said gently. We're going home. But Mom, our oldest protested. We were having fun. I know, baby, Liora said, her voice thick with emotion. But sometimes we have to leave situations that aren't healthy, even when it's hard. As we gathered our belongings, the family continued their chorus of protests. Davin followed us to the door. Alaric, come on, don't do this. She didn't mean it. You know she didn't mean it. I turned to face my brother. That's the problem, Davin. I think she did mean it, and I think you know she meant it. But you'd rather we swallow our pain than confront your wife's cruelty. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly, the sound grating in my own ears. Was it fair when she used our daughter's death against us? Was it fair when every single person in that room chose to protect her instead of us? We're not choosing sides. Yes, you are, Liora interjected, her voice quieter now but no less resolute. You chose, and you chose her. We loaded the kids into the car. As I started the engine, my phone began buzzing with texts from Elowen and other family members, trying to guilt us into returning, into apologizing, into letting it go for the sake of family peace. Liora turned off her phone and stared out the window. They'll never understand, will they? No, I said, pulling out of the driveway. They won't. And we can't go back there, Liora whispered. I can't sit across from her at Christmas dinner and pretend she didn't say what she said. I can't watch everyone act normal while knowing they'd rather protect her than us. Then we won't, I said simply. We'll make our own holidays, our own traditions, with people who actually care about us. Liora reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry, your family. They're not my family, I interrupted, tightening my grip on her hand. Not anymore. Family doesn't do what they did today. As we drove away, I saw Davin still standing in the doorway, Selene beside him with her hand on her belly, and that same satisfied expression. The rest of the family had probably already moved on, convincing themselves that we'd cool down, that we'd come around. That family was more important than principles. They were wrong. The next few days were a strange, unsettling quiet. The phone calls and texts continued, a relentless assault of well-meaning or manipulative attempts to get us to talk it out, to be the bigger person. We ignored most of them, trying to build a new routine for the kids, a new sense of normalcy that didn't involve the constant tension of family obligation. Then came the new escalation. Liora was in her classroom one Tuesday afternoon, overseeing an art project, when her phone buzzed with an urgent call from the front office. She picked it up, her brows furrowing. Mrs. Hayes, it's Principal Octavia. I have a rather unusual situation at pickup. A relative, a Mrs. Selene Thorne, is here insisting she's authorized to pick up your children. She claims there's been a miscommunication about carpooling. Principal Octavia's voice, usually a calm, authoritative presence, held a note of wary suspicion. She's also telling my office staff that you and Mr. Hayes are having family troubles and keeping the kids from their cousins out of spite. Leora's grip tightened on the phone. Her face went pale. Selene here, at her school, trying to take her children? It was a brazen, calculated move. Principal Octavia, Liora said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. Mrs. Thorne is absolutely not authorized to pick up my children, under no circumstances. We explicitly removed her from the pickup list last month. As a teacher, Liora knew the protocols inside and out. The school followed protocol, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Principal Octavia's eyes, when Liora later spoke to her in person, held a fleeting look of suspicion, a silent question about the family troubles. Meanwhile, my own world began to feel the ripple effects. As a small contractor, my reputation in Willow Creek was everything. My name was on the line with every beam, every foundation, every finished project. I relied on word of mouth, on my honest, straightforward approach to business. A few days after the pool party, I started noticing subtle shifts. A supplier I'd worked with for years seemed curt on the phone. A crew member mentioned, almost casually, that he'd heard some things about our family. Then, a potential new client, someone I'd been courting for weeks for a lucrative custom home build, abruptly canceled our final meeting. Something came up, their assistant said vaguely, her voice lacking any real apology. The problem wasn't just Selene's cruelty anymore. It was the insidious way her narrative was spreading, contaminating the very wellspring of our lives. They weren't just trying to make us forgive. They were trying to ostracize us, to break us financially, to isolate us until we had no choice but to crawl back. That night, Liora and I sat on our small porch swing, the familiar creak a comfort in the escalating chaos. The kids were asleep, their innocent breaths a reminder of what we were fighting for. The cool night air offered no relief from the burning anxiety in my chest. Leora's hand found mine, her fingers interlacing with a desperate grip. She tried to take them, Alaric, Liora whispered, her voice barely audible. From school, in front of Principal Octavia. I squeezed her hand. I know. And I lost that contract, the one for the Millers. I think it's because of all this. We looked at each other, the unspoken fear hanging heavy in the air. My contractor's mind, always mapping out risks and structural integrity, saw the full, terrifying scope of the attack. I'm not just alone, Liora, I said, the words heavy, tasting of steel and fear. We're about to lose everything. Not just family, but how everyone sees us. Maybe even my business. And most importantly, the peace we're trying to build for our kids. The battle wasn't just about truth anymore. It was about survival. And for the first time, I realized just how vulnerable we truly were. The chilling realization hung in the air between us that night, heavy and acrid like the smoke from a burnt-out building. We weren't just battling a volatile relative. We were in a war for our reputation, our livelihood, our peace. My contractor's mind, accustomed to assessing structural weaknesses, saw the precarious position we were in. The next step had to be decisive. I'm going to talk to Davin, I told Liora the following morning, the words tasting like metal. One last time. He needs to see this, really see it. Liora, her eyes shadowed from another restless night, nodded slowly. As a primary school teacher, she was a master of conflict resolution, of finding common ground, but even she knew when a line had been irrevocably crossed. Make him look, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Make him understand what his wife is doing. The drive to Davin's immaculate house felt longer than usual. The manicured lawns and symmetrical facades of the upscale neighborhood, a stark contrast to our own humble, lived-in street, seemed to mock the chaos brewing beneath the surface of our family. Davin, ever the engineer, answered the door, a strained smile plastered on his face. He led me to his gleaming, minimalist living room, a space designed for order, not emotional explosions. Alaric, good to see you, man, he began, attempting a forced casualness. Look, I know things got a little heated the other day. Selene's just hormones, you know. The pregnancy is really taking a toll. She didn't mean anything by it. My jaw tightened. Davin, we're beyond hormones. We're beyond she didn't mean it. She accused Liora of being responsible for Aria's death, in front of our family. That's not a moment of anger, that's calculated cruelty. And now she's trying to pick up our kids from school, slandering Leora's name to Principal Octavia. My contracts are starting to dry up because of the rumors. My voice, usually calm and measured like a blueprint, was now an agitated hum. This has to stop. She needs to apologize. Genuinely. and you need to stop enabling her. Davin ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. Alaric, come on, an apology? You know Selene. She's too proud. And I can't just, she's my wife. What do you want me to do? Throw her under the bus? The family wants us to move past this. Elowen is beside herself. He spoke like a software engineer debugging a faulty code, trying to isolate the problem without admitting the entire system was corrupted. We just need to reset the parameters, cool things down. Maybe a family dinner? Just us? No one else? A reset? Davin, you're missing the point. You want to reset a situation where your wife just used my dead daughter as a weapon and then tried to snatch my living children? This isn't a bug in the system. This is a deliberate act of malice. And your silence makes you complicit. Before Davin could respond, the front door burst open, and Selene swept into the living room, her eyes blazing. She must have overheard. Her pregnant belly seemed to precede her, a human shield she wielded with impunity. She had an almost theatrical way of moving, as if perpetually on stage. How dare you! She shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. You come into my home after you've alienated the entire family and accuse my husband? You're making a huge deal out of nothing. It was a joke. A joke, Selene? Leora's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the air from behind me. She must have followed me in, sensing the confrontation was inevitable. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. You're pathetic, Liora, Selene sneered, her eyes raking over my wife's still thin frame. Always so melodramatic. Honestly, it's no wonder Aria ran out into traffic. You were probably too busy being a dedicated teacher to notice what was happening in your own backyard. Maybe that's why your daughter died, because you weren't watching her properly, just like you're not watching your children now. The words hit Liora like a physical blow. Her face went ashen, the color draining from it completely. My own blood ran cold. The image of Aria's teddy bear, smeared with red, flashed before my eyes. Selene had found the deepest, darkest wound, the one Liora had been silently carrying, the one I had failed to acknowledge and help her heal. She didn't just say it, she threw it like a grenade, aimed directly at Leora's fragile sense of responsibility, at my own buried guilt. But this time, Liora didn't crumple. There was a shift, subtle at first, then stark. The instinct of a teacher, trained to document, to protect, to respond to crisis, took over. Her hand, moving with surprising speed, dipped into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The familiar red recording light blinked to life. Say it again, Selene, Liora said, her voice deadly calm, stripped of all emotion. Her composure in the face of such raw cruelty was chilling. Tell everyone how our daughter's death is our fault. Let everyone see exactly who you are. Selene, momentarily taken aback by Leora's sudden cold resolve, stammered. Davin lunged, grabbing Selene's arm. Stop it, Selene. Turn that off, Liora. But it was too late. From across the street, Mrs. Alges Haverford, an older woman with a meticulously kept garden and a reputation for knowing everything that happened on our block, had stopped pushing her lawnmower. Her eyes, usually twinkling with neighborly gossip, were wide with shock. She, too, pulled out her phone. Public property, Davin, Mrs. Haverford called out, her voice surprisingly strong. You're making quite the scene. Selene, recognizing her mistake, recoiled. Her face flushed, not with shame but with fury at being exposed. Davin, looking like a deer caught in headlights, quickly dragged Selene back toward their house, but she couldn't resist one last, venomous parting shot. This is why nobody wants you at family events anymore. You're exhausting. Nobody wants us? Leora's laugh was sharp, a broken, bitter sound. Check your Thanksgiving guest list again, Selene. Now. They peeled out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the pristine asphalt. Mrs. Haverford walked over, shaking her head, her face a mask of disgust. I recorded the whole thing, she said, her voice quiet now. Just in case you need it. That woman, she is vile. The video was on social media within hours. Not posted by us, we had no interest in adding to the public spectacle. It was Mrs. Haverford's daughter, who had seen the raw, unedited footage. The court of public opinion was swift and brutal. Selene's carefully crafted image as the victimized, hormonal pregnant woman crumbled. The comment section exploded, filled with a mixture of shock, outrage, and dawning recognition. My phone rang. It was Elowen. I saw the video, Alaric, she said, her voice thin, fragile. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Nolan just wanted to see his cousin, I said tiredly. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. Davin called me, ranting about boundaries and respect. I told him the only disrespect I saw was from his wife. How'd that go? He hung up on me. A pause, then a shaky sigh. But I'm done enabling him. Watching that video, seeing how she spoke to you both, I'm ashamed I ever defended her. It was an apology, a true, unadulterated apology, stripped of all the usual caveats and excuses. The weight of decades of her peacekeeping finally seemed to crack under the undeniable evidence. Later that evening, another call came. Maris. Did you see Elowen's post? She asked, a note of almost giddy disbelief in her voice. She publicly apologized. Said she'd prioritized peace over protecting people. It's like a dam broke, Alaric. All these people who've been hurt by Selene are finally feeling safe to speak up. My phone's been buzzing, I admitted. Isolde, Roland. They're reaching out quietly, saying they've seen it too. What Selene did to Thalia, it's all coming out. Good, Liora said, her voice still hoarse, but with a new edge of determination. She was sitting next to me on the sofa, scrolling through the comments on Elowen's post, her face illuminated by the screen. Let them all see what they've been enabling. The initial shock of Selene's public attack had been profound, a fresh wound on our already battered hearts. But seeing the raw, undeniable truth of it laid bare for the community, seeing Elowen's long-awaited, genuine remorse, and feeling the quiet but firm solidarity from Maris, Isolde, and Roland, it was a profound shift. We weren't just suffering in isolation anymore. We had allies. Liora leaned her head on my shoulder, a sigh escaping her lips. A sigh not of resignation, but of weary hope. Finally, she whispered, her voice barely audible. We're not alone anymore. The despair, a heavy blanket that had smothered us for months, began to lift, replaced by a nascent strength. We had faced the monster, and for the first time, the world was starting to see her too. The battle was far from over, but the tides, I sensed, had just begun to turn. The relief that washed over us after Elowen's public apology, and Maris's unwavering support was a fleeting, fragile thing. It was hope, yes, but tempered by the chilling certainty that Selene would not surrender easily. A snake, cornered, always strikes back. My contractor's mind immediately moved to the next phase, securing the perimeter, shoring up the defenses. We had gained allies, but the true battle was yet to come. A few days later, a process server, a young man looking uncomfortable in his crisp uniform, knocked on our door. He handed me a thick envelope. Alaric Hayes, he confirmed, his voice flat. Inside, my gut clenched. Selene and Davin were suing us. Defamation, emotional distress, alienation of family affection. They were claiming the video, Mrs. Haverford posted, the one where Selene screamed about Aria's death being Leora's fault, had damaged Selene's reputation and caused her postpartum depression. They're actually suing us, Liora whispered, staring at the papers in disbelief, for telling the truth about what she said. Her reputation was damaged by her own mouth, I muttered, reading through the complaint. It was a ludicrous claim, a desperate act of a cornered bully. But it was also a direct assault, one that threatened to bleed us dry financially and emotionally. This wasn't just family drama anymore, it was a legal war. Good, Liora said, her voice surprisingly steady, a calm in the eye of the storm. Let them, this gives us a platform. Her teacher's instinct for fair play, for consequences, was surfacing. The next afternoon, our small living room, usually filled with the comforting chaos of our children's playtime, transformed into a makeshift war room. Maris was there, a fierce, protective glint in her eyes. Cedric, my father, joined via video call, his stoic face etched with concern, but also a newfound resolve. And sitting opposite us, perfectly composed, was Cassandra, our lawyer. I'd found her through an old client, a woman who'd praised Cassandra's sharp mind and no-nonsense approach to complex family disputes. She was known for handling cases involving emotional abuse and workplace harassment, a perfect fit for Selene's insidious tactics. All right, let's lay it all out, Cassandra began, her voice crisp and efficient. She had the air of someone who saw patterns where others saw chaos, a builder of legal structures. They're trying to silence you, to control the narrative, but they've just handed you a gift. This lawsuit forces the truth into a public forum. I leaned forward, my contractor's mind already building the case, piece by piece. Selene isn't just malicious, she's calculating. She thrives on controlling perception. She used her pregnancy as a shield, a tool for manipulation. In the local construction community, word travels fast. The rumors, the canceled contracts, that's her, planting seeds of doubt about my reliability, my stability. She knows how much reputation means in this business. I pulled up a timeline I'd drafted, complete with dates, times, and brief descriptions of each incident. She manipulates social media, twisting stories, painting herself as the victim. Liora added, her voice clear and precise, a seasoned educator detailing an incident report. She knows where to hit, Alaric. She knew about my postpartum depression. She knew about those few times I was forgetful, distracted. She's been collecting those details, waiting for the perfect moment to weaponize them against me, against my competence as a mother and by extension as a teacher. She produced a thick, spiral-bound notebook. This is my teaching journal. I started it years ago, just a place to log funny classroom anecdotes, parent interactions, sometimes even my own struggles. After Aria, I started using it to log everything. Every text from Selene, every strange phone call, every passive-aggressive comment, the dates, the times, the exact words. I felt like I needed to document the madness. Cassandra's eyes widened slightly as she leafed through Leora's meticulous notes. This is gold, Liora. Absolute gold. A detailed, contemporaneous record. It's exactly what we need. Maris spoke next, her voice tight with suppressed anger. Selene's been doing this for years, to other family members, to cousin Thalia after she lost her baby. My own mother, Elowen, was a victim of her subtle manipulation for decades, always prioritizing peace over confronting Selene's cruelty. She recounted specific instances, painting a chilling picture of Selene's consistent pattern of behavior. Cedric from the screen weighed in. My divorce from Elowen was partly because of this very dynamic. Her need to keep the peace at all costs, even when that cost was truth and justice. Selene is a symptom of a deeper family issue of enabling. This isn't just about what happened to you. It's about breaking a cycle. So what's the plan? I asked Cassandra, my gaze firm. We're not going to roll over. No, you're not, Cassandra confirmed, her gaze sharp and intelligent. They want to use the legal system to silence you. We're going to use it to expose them. We won't file a countersuit immediately. We'll let their defamation suit proceed. Because in discovery, under oath, we can force them to answer for every lie, every manipulation, every cruel word. The video from Mrs. Haverford is irrefutable. Leora's notes are meticulous. Maris's testimony about past incidents establishes a pattern. The other family members who are now willing to speak, even privately, will lend weight. That too. So we let them drag us through this? Liora asked, her voice tinged with a weariness that went beyond the physical. It's a calculated risk, Cassandra explained. If we fight them head-on, if we let this go to trial, your names, your lives will be put through the ringer publicly. Alaric, your business could take a significant hit. Liora, your reputation as a teacher could suffer. But the truth is your weapon. My goal is to use the threat of discovery, of public testimony, to force Selene and Davin to retreat, to agree to a legally binding non-contact agreement. They want to control the narrative. We'll turn the tables and make them face the truth. But if they don't back down, if they force our hand, we go to trial, and we win. The air crackled with the weight of her words. A risky gamble. If we lost, everything would be shattered. But if we won, we wouldn't just win a lawsuit. We'd reclaim our lives. We're in, I said, looking at Liora, who met my gaze with fierce resolve. Whatever it takes. The lawsuit papers arrived, heavy with legalese and thinly veiled threats. Selene and Davin were making good on their promise. But this time, the fear was laced with defiance. We weren't hiding. We immediately engaged Cassandra. The execution of the plan began. My garage, usually home to lumber and tools, became a secondary war room. I meticulously organized all digital evidence. Screenshots of Selene's public posts, her deleted comments, the timestamps on Davin's manipulative texts. My contractor's brain, used to sorting through hundreds of invoices and permits, found a strange satisfaction in the precision of the task. Liora, with her teacher's eye for detail, proofread everything, cross-referencing dates, adding specific emotional impacts to each entry in her journal. Remember the time she told Mrs. Henderson that our son's chess club was distracting him from real life during parent-teacher night? Liora murmured, flipping through a page. She said it right after she saw his picture on the local news for winning the regional tournament. Got it, I confirmed, adding the note to the growing pile of evidence. Cassandra was a force of nature. She filed our responses, precise and unflinching, laying the groundwork for our defense. She contacted Mrs. Haverford, who, with civic duty in her eyes, eagerly signed an affidavit confirming her video and what she'd witnessed. Maris provided a detailed account of Selene's past abuses, including the incident with cousin Thalia. Some other family members, emboldened by Elowen's public stand, quietly sent messages of support, offering to testify if absolutely necessary, though most still preferred to remain out of the public eye. It was slow, painstaking work, like building a house foundation, but each piece of evidence was a brick, solidifying our case. The day of the mediation, a mandatory step before trial, arrived with a tense humidity that matched the atmosphere. We met in a sterile conference room in downtown Willow Creek, a neutral territory chosen by the court. Alaric, Liora, and Cassandra sat on one side of a long, polished table. On the other, Selene and Davin, flanked by their own lawyer, a slick, weary-looking man named Mr. Finch. Selene, still heavily pregnant, wore an expression of aggrieved martyrdom. Davin looked pale and drawn. Cassandra began, her voice calm but unwavering. My clients, Alaric and Liora Hayes, are here to address the baseless accusations of defamation. We have compiled a comprehensive record of events, which we are prepared to present in full, in open court, should this matter proceed to trial. She then launched into it. Alaric, using a projector, displayed Mrs. Haverford's video on the wall. The footage, raw and unedited, showed Selene's enraged face, her accusations piercing the silence of the room. Everything is about her since her child died, her voice shrieked from the speakers. She died because Liora wasn't watching her properly. Selene flinched, her eyes darting nervously. Davin shifted uncomfortably. This video, provided by a third-party witness, is irrefutable, Cassandra stated. It clearly shows Mrs. Thorne making false and deeply hurtful statements. Furthermore, we have a detailed log of Mrs. Thorne's consistent pattern of abusive behavior, spanning several years. She passed Liora's journal, now filled with legal tabs, to Mr. Finch. Liora, her voice quiet but firm, spoke directly to Selene, not to the lawyers. You tried to take my children from school, Selene. You lied to the principal. You spread rumors in our community that affected Alaric's livelihood. You used Aria, our daughter, as a weapon in your petty arguments. And you did it all, knowing the pain we were in. Her composure was unnerving, the quiet strength of a teacher standing up to a bully in her own classroom. Mr. Finch, looking increasingly agitated, finally spoke up. My clients believe this is a misunderstanding, born from emotional distress during a difficult pregnancy. Emotional distress, Cassandra countered, her voice laced with steel, does not excuse calculated cruelty. Mrs. Hayes, a dedicated elementary school teacher, has dealt with children and parents for years. She understands empathy. What Mrs. Thorne exhibited was a profound lack of it, aimed directly at a grieving mother and father. She then began to methodically present the other evidence, the texts, the detailed log entries, the testimonies from Maris. Each piece, a nail hammered into Selene's fabricated narrative. Davin, usually so composed, looked utterly defeated. He tried to interject once. Liora, you know Selene didn't... Cassandra cut him off, her voice sharp and legal. Mr. Thorne, your wife's intent is evident in her repeated actions and her own words. Any further interruptions will be noted as a deliberate attempt to obstruct this mediation. Selene, realizing the trap she'd walked into, began to cry. Not the furious shrieks from the video, but a soft, manipulative whimper, wiping away tears that weren't quite there. She glanced at Davin, silently begging for rescue, but he stared at the table, shoulders slumped. Then came the moment. Mr. Finch, his face grim, cleared his throat. My clients are prepared to offer a settlement. A mutual, legally binding, no-contact agreement. Both parties agree to cease all contact, direct or indirect, including through third parties or social media. Any violation would result in severe legal consequences. A quiet, powerful triumph swelled in my chest. Liora's hand found mine under the table, her fingers interlacing. The risk had paid off. We had called their bluff, and they had folded. Selene, the architect of our pain, the mistress of manipulation, was trapped. Her face, tear-streaked and contorted, held a new emotion. Utter, unadulterated shock. The realization that she had not only lost control of the narrative, but had irrevocably damaged her own standing, was clear in her eyes. It was a victory hard won, a brutal truth finally laid bare. The smile Liora and I exchanged was quiet, almost imperceptible, but it held the weight of mountains moved, of justice finally served. The battle was over, and we had won. We walked out of Cassandra's office into the afternoon sun, the world feeling both exactly the same and irrevocably changed. The weight, the constant grinding anxiety of waiting for the next attack, had lifted, but in its place was an echoing void. The immediate silence from phones, from social media, felt strange, almost unsettling. David and Selene disappeared from our lives, not just from our social media feeds, but from the periphery of our community events. We heard through hushed whispers, through Maris, that their marriage, built on Selene's volatile personality and Davin's silent enabling, was crumbling under the weight of the public exposure and the lawsuit's fallout. As a contractor, I understood the principle. A faulty foundation inevitably leads to collapse. Back home, Liora and I found ourselves drifting into Aria's room. It had been largely untouched, a sacred, painful space. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Liora walked to Aria's small bed, neatly made, as if she might return any moment. She picked up the plush pink rabbit that Aria had cherished, running her thumb over its soft ear. I saw the faint red smear on the teddy bear, that last brutal, tangible piece of Aria's short life. Liora didn't cry. Her eyes were distant, but calm, the acceptance of a teacher who's seen profound sorrow, yet still finds strength to nurture. She turned to me, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. Then, she gently took the teddy bear from my hand. Without a word, she walked to a wooden keepsake box on Aria's dresser, a box I had built for her years ago, the joints perfectly flush, the lid smooth beneath her fingers. She placed the bear inside, next to a tiny ballet slipper and a handful of crayon drawings. This wasn't about forgetting Aria. This was about honoring her, protecting her memory, by finally putting the pain, the injustice, into its proper place, sealed, but never erased. I put my arm around Liora, pulling her close. Our eyes met, a silent understanding passing between us. No words were needed. Months later, the air was crisp with the promise of Thanksgiving. Our home, once just a house, now felt truly whole, truly ours. The sounds of laughter echoed from the kitchen. Maris, Thalia, and her family, Elowin. Elowin, my mother, now a quiet but firm ally, was diligently peeling potatoes, a newfound serenity in her movements. She'd chosen us. She'd chosen truth. Our children's laughter spilled into the living room, unburdened, unobserved by a cruel eye. A new picture sat on the mantelpiece, beside Aria's smiling photograph. Our new family. Maris, Thalia's kids, Elowin, Alaric, Liora, and our 3 children, all beaming, arms linked, a patchwork quilt of chosen kinship. I watched Liora, her face radiant as she helped our youngest daughter decorate a paper turkey, the scent of cinnamon and roast turkey filling the air. She was a teacher, yes, but now, more than ever, she was an architect of peace, building a future brick by emotional brick. She caught my eye and smiled, a pure, unburdened joy. We had lost family, the kind defined by blood, but we had found our people, the ones who showed up, the ones who cared, the ones who knew that protection sometimes looked like distance, and boundaries sometimes looked like walls. A soft knock at the door. I opened it. Standing on our porch, clutching a worn chessboard, was Nolan, Davin's son. His eyes, wary but hopeful, met mine. He looked younger, less burdened than the last time I'd seen him. He was a child caught in the crossfire, innocent, yet so aware. Liora, hearing the knock, came to the door. Her eyes softened when she saw him. Nolan looked up at her, a shy smile. This was Alaric, and Leora's new normal. A family forged not by obligation or shared DNA, but by shared humanity, compassion, and the unwavering belief that some bonds, despite everything, could still find a way to thrive. We had won, yes. And in that winning, we had found true peace.